Hello, everyone, and welcome to lesson number 5. Lesson number 5. And we're definitely glad and excited that you are here. For this lesson, we will be looking at Fibonacci sequence. Yes, Fibonacci sequence. Let's begin. So, what is a Fibonacci sequence? A Fibonacci sequence is a sequence where each term is the sum of the two terms before it. Now, when we say sum, we mean addition. We have to add because sum is the product or the result of adding two numbers. Next, how do we get the next term? So if we have a Fibonacci sequence, how do we get the next term in the sequence? Well, to get the next term, all you have to do is add the two previous terms together to get the next term. Take for example this sequence. This is indeed a Fibonacci sequence. So let's look at it. How can we get the next term? So we have 1 and we have 1. How are we going to get the next term? Well, in order for us to get the next term, all we have to do is add the two terms before it. So 1 plus 1, we know 1 plus 1 gives us 2. And that's how we got this 2 here. Again, in order for us to get the next term in a Fibonacci sequence, we have to add the two previous terms. And here, clearly, all we have to do is add 1 plus 1, and that's going to give us the next term, which is 2. Now, we're going to explain more how we're going to get the rest of these numbers. But that's the basic idea. Add the two previous terms to get the next term. Now, Fibonacci sequence is useful and we can and we can find it in nature as well. So we can find the Fibonacci sequence in a sunflower. We can find the Fibonacci sequence in a pine cone. We can find it in broccoli. We can find it in a seashell. We can find it in a pyramid. And we can also find it in the galaxy. And here's other examples of the Fibonacci sequence in nature. But let's move on to the general formula for the Fibonacci sequence. So the general formula for the Fibonacci sequence is xn, which is the nth term, is equal to xn minus 1 plus xn minus 2. Now n minus 1 is going to be the previous term. That's going to be the term before the nth term, the term before xn. And we're going to get xn minus 2, which is going to be the term before xn minus 1. So we have this term, which is xn, that's the nth term. And the term before this one is going to be xn minus 1. And the term before this one is going to be xn minus 2. So the idea is that you add these two terms, the terms that are before xn, you add them to get your next term. So let's use this example. So first we have the Fibonacci sequence. And what we're going to do is we're going to let x1 and x2 be equal to 1 by default. So that's by default x sub 1, or x1 is equal to 1, and x2 is equal to 1. That's by default. So we start off with that. So x1 is equal to 1, and x2 is equal to 1 as well. So now the question is, how are we going to get x3? So x3 is going to be our next term. So x3. So if this is x3, that means n is going to be equal to 3. So we have x3. Because n is equal to 3, so n is equal to n is equal to 3. This is our nth term. So in order for us to get what x sub 3 is, or x3 is, we have to do xn minus 1. Now, n is 3, so what is n minus 1 if n is 3? Well, n minus 1, if n is 3, that's going to be 3 minus 1. And what is 3 minus 1? 3 minus 1 is 2. So that means that x2 is going to be the term before x3. Then we get xn minus 2. If n is 3, because that's our nth term, and our nth term is 3. If n is 3, and we have n minus 2, what is n minus 2? That's going to be 3 minus 2. And what is 3 minus 2? Well, 3 minus 2 is definitely 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. So that means we're going to get x sub 1, or x1. So that means they're telling us that in order for us to get x3, we have to add x2 and x1. So basically, in order for us to get x3, all we have to do is add x2, which is 1, and x1, which is 1 as well. And that's how we're going to get x3. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have x3, which is going to be x2, which is 1, and x1, which is 1, and that's going to give us 2. So again, x3 is going to be x2, which is 1, and x1, which is 1, which gives us 2. Now let's find the next term. So the next term is going to be x4. So it's going to be x sub 4. So in order for us to get x4 based on the formula, all we have to do is we have to add the two previous terms. So that means that in order for us to get x4, let me erase this. All right, erase. Okay, good. In order for us to get x4, all we have to do is add, let me get another color. Let's use, say, green. In order for us to get x4, all we have to do is add the two previous terms. That means we're going to add x3 and we're going to add x2. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order for us to get x4, all we have, which is 3, all we have to do is add, we have to add what? The two previous terms. So that means we have to add 2 plus 1, because those are the two previous terms. x3 is 2, x2 is 1, so we add 2 plus 1, the two previous terms, and that's going to give us 3. And that makes sense, because xn minus 1, well, that's going to be x3, which is 2, and xn minus 2 is going to be x2, which is going to be 1. So 2 plus 1 is going to be 3, which basically means all we're going to do is add the two previous terms. That's all we're doing. Now let's move on to x5. So x5, in order for us to get x5, which is 5, all we have to do is add the two previous terms before it. So let's go ahead and do that. So x5, we're going to add the two previous terms. So the two previous terms is what? It's going to be x4, right, and x3. That's our two previous terms. So in order for us to get x5, all we need to do is we need to add what? We need to add the two previous terms, which is x4, which is 3, and x3, which is 2. That's going to be 3 plus 2. x4, 3, x3, 2. So 3 plus 2, which gives us 5. Next, we have to find our next term, which is going to be x6. And x6 is 8. So let's see if we can find this x6 term, which we already know it's 8 based on our sequence that we have already laid out. But let's actually use the formula to help us find it. So let's go ahead and add the two previous terms. So in order for us to get x6, all we need to do is we need to add x5, which is 5, and we need to add x4, which is 3. That's how we're going to get x6. And so let's add them. So x6 is going to be 5 plus 3, which gives us 8. Now let's go ahead and let's do x7. So x7, in order for us to get x7, following the Fibonacci sequence, all we have to do is add the two previous terms. And the two previous terms, if this is x7, the two previous terms is going to be x6. So let's go ahead and highlight that, x6, which is 8, and x5, which is 5. So that's how we're going to get x7. So x7, using the Fibonacci formula, or the Fibonacci sequence formula, we're going to get x7, which is going to be 8 plus 5, which gives us 13. And that's exactly what x7 is. It's 13. And finally, for this one, we could do x sub 8, or x8. How are we going to get x8? Well, in order for us to get x8, all we have to do is add the two previous terms. And so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to highlight the two previous terms. What are the two previous terms? We have x7, so we add that, and we have x6, so we add that together. So x7 and x6, what that's going to be? That's going to be 13, which is x7, plus 8, which is x6. So we have 13 plus 8, which gives us 21. And that's how we use the Fibonacci sequence formula, or the general formula for the Fibonacci sequence, to find our next term in the Fibonacci sequence. Now you could also do x9, you could do that on your own, and x10, and so on. All you have to do is add the two previous terms. Hopefully you find this video helpful. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.